Welcome to the Injury Law Pod, the podcast that explores and demystifies the complex world of personal injury law. Each week, Missouri personal injury attorney Eric Bartlett dives into the legal issues surrounding personal injury cases to help you understand your rights and options when seeking justice and compensation for personal injuries. So sit back, relax, and let's explore the world of personal injury law together.
Welcome to another episode of the Injury Law Pod. I am your host, Eric Bartlett, 28-year personal injury lawyer, and this is the podcast where we deal with everything personal injury law related. And today on the pod, we've got Ashley Irwin, attorney, and Ashley works here with us. We're going to talk to Ashley about her background, how she made it to us, back to us, and then we're going to talk about some cases that we've been handling and whatever else comes to mind. So welcome, Ashley.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You bet. So Ashley, you obviously have a long history with me and our law firm.
I do.
And that all started, I'm going to say when you were 19 years old.
Yeah, which was just a couple years ago.
Right. So why don't you tell the folks a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I've always been interested in law ever since I was a pretty young kid. And so that was always my goal, is to eventually end up in law school. So prior to getting there, I was obviously interested in becoming an employee at a law firm and landed in your guys' laps when I was a wee young one of 19 years old and had no idea what I was doing. So worked there for 5 years while I was doing my undergrad studies, and then was forced to quit when I started law school because they don't let you work while you're in law school, not for the first year anyway. So
all true. And yeah, for 5 years, you basically learned the ins and outs of the personal injury law world, true?
Yeah, definitely. Got to see the behind the scenes of how it operates, of how you get it to litigation, how you settle it before litigation, and everything that goes in handling, maintaining, settling personal injury cases.
And back in the day, if I remember right, you went to some jury trials with me.
I did, yes.
Because you would help me with all the things, whether it was picking the jury and taking notes, obviously getting exhibits together and
carrying all the paper.
Yes. And then on the other side of it, obviously, you know, the majority of our cases generally settle before a full-blown jury trial. You were responsible for collecting medical records and the medical bills, keeping in communication with the clients, preparing the demands that would go to the insurance companies, and really just everything that was involved in handling a client's personal injury claim.
Yeah, and I distinctly remember being involved, sitting in the room for depositions, and also handling the discovery, like requests for production of documents and interrogatories and things of that nature as well.
True. And so when you went to law school, you know, do you remember whether, obviously you had that just awesome experience with us, and I like to feel like you hopefully learned a lot and gained valuable insight into how to be a good lawyer.
Yeah, and so the thing about law school is it teaches you the theory of law and how to think analytically. It does not teach you how to step into a courtroom and handle a case. So I feel like I had that leg up on my peers because I had been in the courtroom with you guys. I had handled cases before. I see how law firms function and like the real life situation that you're in before all of the legal theory comes into play and you're arguing something in front of a judge.
And that is so true. Law school absolutely does not prepare you to really be a lawyer in the real sense of it. Obviously, you're studying cases and you're learning how to analyze factual situations and apply those within the realm of the law that's out there, or vice versa, apply the law to the factual situations. But when it comes time to be in an active law firm and know the nuts and bolts of how things move forward in that setting, obviously there's no other substitute for just true experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, and then of course, there's even a different side of it, which I think somewhere down the road you've had to experience, which is really like the business side of running a law firm, which, make no mistake about it, a law firm is a business. And if you're not in one of the big law firms where you're strictly a lawyer doing lawyer work, but you're out on your own, or you're in a small law firm setting, you have to know the business side of a law firm. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Especially if you're in business for yourself as opposed to working for somebody else. You are running a business. And so you kind of have two jobs in one. You are a business owner and you are a lawyer.
Very true. And, you know, they always say that it's important that you have a healthy law firm business, not only for yourself and not only for the people that work for you, but for your clients. Because if you are in a situation where whatever that looks like, whether it's money issues or other issues, you know, that's going to affect everybody, and it's going to affect your clients. It's going to affect your ability to represent them through all of the professional standards that we're obligated to represent them.
Yeah. And money issues are definitely the top thing of the list for why lawyers can get in trouble from our ethics board. So that is definitely should be every lawyer's top priority.
Indeed, I agree. So you go to law school after 5 years of basically being a paralegal for us, and I can't remember, had you gotten any kind of paralegal training before starting with us?
I did. I had my paralegal degree. They at Penn Valley Community College here in Kansas City. So they offer a certificate and they offer an associate's degree. And I started out going the certificate route and then just finished up just getting the associate's degree.
And I learned long ago, you know, I thought that it's kind of like law school.
Mm-hmm.
The paralegal certification, you know, I thought somebody would come in with that and would have a decent working knowledge of real world legal work, but not necessarily true.
No, not true. And after I got to law school, I realized how similar the paralegal program actually was to law school, because you are reading case law, they are teaching you how to analyze it. So it was kind of a crash course in law school, which they also did a little bit of more normal day activities. I distinctly remember there being a course on how to write a letter, which I thought was wild at the time because 21 years ago, everybody knew how to write a letter. You would be shocking how many young people, now that everything is electronic, don't know the ins and outs of how to properly format or even mail a letter. So I feel like that would be necessary today, but I remember thinking how silly it was at the time.
Yeah, and I'm thinking they should ask me how to run these paralegal certifications because I would make it more nuts and bolts, less law schoolish. Like I say, I've talked to enough people that have gone through those and have had those people working for me, and you know they're studying constitutional law or something, and I'm like, why? Because that's not realistically what lawyers need. They need people that know what to do, and they should be learning how to electronically file things, and you know what does an interrogatory look like, and you know how do you handle those, or requests for production of documents, and you know various motions. And again, maybe they touch on some of that stuff, but most of the people, including you, that have come my way didn't really know. I had to teach them those things.
Yeah, there's no substitution for an internship with a law firm because you get the other side of things, definitely.
Yep. And I also think that's true with law students. We always have a law clerk around. This summer, we actually have two law clerks. And again, I mean, I know we already talked about going to law school, you just don't get the nuts and bolts of how to do things. And you get so much experience working in the real world.
Yeah. And one thing I will say, I went to law school at UMKC, born and raised in Kansas City, did all my undergrad, did my law school here as well. UMKC has a couple of clinics where you do actually get to practice law as a law student under the supervision of an attorney. And that was the most beneficial thing I experienced in law school as far as preparing you for stepping into a courtroom.
Cool. Yeah. And the best I got at my law school, I was involved in on the moot court board, which was focused on appellate type arguments. So we would do a whole thing where we had to brief an issue and we had to argue it in front of, probably lawyers that were acting like appellate judges. And then we got graded on that. And so actually there was no question it was good for having to get up, defend your position, all that stuff. At the time when I was in law school, I actually never envisioned myself as a trial lawyer at all. It wasn't even in my potential realm of thinking. And so I didn't participate. Most law schools have trial courses or groups or whatever it looks like where you can go, you can practice doing jury trials, same kind of thing. And I never participated in any of that. I came out and learned it on the fly, so to speak. What about you? Did you do anything like that?
Yeah, trial advocacy 1 and 2, I definitely did because I definitely wanted to be a litigator when I got out. Loved the courtroom, loved thinking on my feet. It's kind of an adrenaline rush to be in a courtroom, kind of in any area of law, whether it's like criminal defense or personal injury or family law. If you're in there and judges are just asking you questions, you got to know your cases, you got to know your law and your argument. And it feels really good to be able to present a logical argument to a judge and then have a judge rule in your favor.
See, this is where you and I differ. Because now, again, I think you've jumped out of an airplane, right?
I have twice.
Yeah, see that I'm not going to do that. And so what you find as an adrenaline rush, I find as an anxiety producer. And so, what's interesting is, I've tried a lot of jury trials at this point. I don't necessarily enjoy them. Obviously, there's a lot of lawyers that do, and there's plenty of trial lawyers that don't. Because they are, there's, to me, again, it's a lot of anxiety because it's an uncertain situation. You don't know how it's going to turn out. It requires an insane amount of preparation. While the trial is going on, I don't sleep well. I don't eat well. There's nothing about the experience that I've ever enjoyed. Obviously, getting good results for clients is makes it all worth it when it's done. But for me, it has never been something I look forward to. And I know you love the courtroom. I'm okay. The less that I'm in a courtroom, again, it's comes with the territory. But yeah, you love it. And so what else? Obviously it's an adrenaline rush. What else can you say about why you love it so much?
I'm not quite sure because all of those things you just said are completely true. I also experienced that, the bad sleep, the poor eating habits, the stress. You're up until 2 a.m. and then you wake up at 6 a.m. to keep going some more. And then you're traveling to wherever, if it's an hour away or 20 minutes away to the courthouse. And it is uncertain. You can have the law on your side, you can have the facts on your side. And the fact is when you step into a courtroom, particularly a jury trial, as opposed to a bench trial, which is where you just have the judge decide the issues, it is all up in the air and you never know what's going to happen. So stepping into a courtroom is a huge risk. But at the end of the day, I've done 2 jury trials, so not nearly as many as you, but I have got a verdict in my favor for both of them. And I think that just feels so good. It's hard to beat that type of feeling.
Yeah, I know. And I was really impressed because I remember, and that was kind of before you had come back around to us.
Right.
You're out there on your own, and you did those. And I was just kind of laughing to myself, truthfully. But that's you. I mean, you have little fear. And yeah, you went out there and did it. And meanwhile, for Eric, I second chaired probably about 5 jury trials before then I ever went and did the first one on my own, because I'm more of I need to see it unfold a few times before I'm just ready to jump all in on my own. And so we definitely have different internal makeups, constitutions.
There you go.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And so, but that's what makes the world go around, and that's what makes everybody different. And we all have our own unique styles. So when you came out, talk a little bit about, so what did you do first?
Well,
And I say when you came out of law school.
yeah. So while I was in law school, since my background was in personal injury from working for you and Steve, I gravitated towards personal injury. And so I did some law clerk work for some personal injury firms. And then that was back in like 2009 and 10, after the economy had just tanked. And so finding a job actually was very difficult. And so I was just kind of bouncing around trying to figure out, do I want to do PI work? Do I want to do something else? And I ended up also working at a criminal defense firm, which was absolutely fascinating. I also loved it. Also gets you in the courtroom all the time. So I think it was kind of natural for me to like that kind of work. But at the end of the day, I landed in family law. Basically through my best friend in law school was clerking for a family law judge. And then she connected me with a really good family law attorney. And so I started working for her, and she mentored me up. And so I landed in family law, and I've actually been practicing mainly family law for the past 10 years.
How's that going?
Well, there's a reason why I'm coming back to personal injury.
Yeah.
Family law is a very difficult area to practice. It is highly emotional, and it's very difficult for clients. But again, I love it because you're in the courtroom all the time. There's very little areas of law where you get to litigate as much as in family law. And in family law, you have to know all sorts of different areas of law: tax law, property law. So a lot more than just your domestic custody or child support knowledge.
Yeah. And again, I think this is where, this is how we differ, because I mean, I've always literally told anybody and everybody, if for any reason I had to go do family law, I would just stop being a lawyer. And it's so emotional. And it's a tough time in people's lives, and they're fighting over the smallest things, because generally they hate each other. And to be in the middle of that, and you're probably rarely the hero. Certainly through the process, you're probably not. Now maybe on the end result, you can have a good result for your client and they appreciate it. But again, it's just hard because people are in such emotional turmoil during that whole process.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And there's a saying, and I'm going to misquote it, but it's something along the lines of, you get really good people at the absolute worst times of their lives. And that's true. And sometimes they are fighting and arguing about very trivial things. And then sometimes they're fighting and arguing about the most important thing in their life, which is their children. But I think like a parental expectation of parenting versus the courts, where all you have to do is be above the abuse and neglect line and you're sufficient, is very different. And that's where a lot of people struggle with, but why isn't this enough evidence for me to get what I want? So it's hard. It's hard for an attorney to explain and set expectations. It's hard for parents to be able to accept that type of information.
Got it. Well, then when you flip the script and you come over to personal injury, from what I experienced, the upside is, right, everybody hates insurance companies. so we all have sort of a common enemy. Now, obviously, in the personal injury world, we're representing people, obviously a lot of people that are seriously injured. Their life has been turned upside down. It's a huge moment in their lives. And so, it's not roses and sunshine by any means to be involved in that in any way. I mean, again, lawyers are sort of middlemen or middle women. And, we're in the middle, and our job is to represent our clients, obviously, zealously and all that stuff. But at the same time, a lot of our job is to, tell our clients how it is, set expectations. And, when somebody's been really hurt and they feel like, that they're due restitution, compensation, and sometimes for a multitude of possible reasons, it's just not going to come together. And those are really tough situations to be in, really tough conversations to have. And I mean, okay, so you've been back in the personal injury world have you been back around it for a year?
A year and a half.
Year and a half. Wow, time flies when we're having fun. And so, I mean, how do you compare and contrast sort of the two areas?
Yeah, well, those are also difficult conversations to have with personal injury clients for things such as like a flat out denial of liability, whether it's a motor vehicle accident and the two people disagree about who is at fault, and you've got the other insurance company who just won't accept liability. And so there's no coverage. So no money to be able to pay out to a client potentially, or like such as a dog bite case where who owns the dog, who's responsible for the dog? What if the dog doesn't live at the house where the owner or the injured person was bitten? Who's going to cover this injury? And sometimes it's the simple things of ownership and liability. And when there ends up being no coverage because you can't link the two, those are disappointing conversations to have. I feel like in the past 10 years with my managing of client expectations in family law realm, those are easier conversations for me to be able to have because I've got so much experience with that. But those are, I think, the most disappointing portions of being a personal injury attorney or when you have someone who's so severely injured and the other driver who is at fault and they do accept liability, but they only have like minimal coverage. So there's only $25,000 to be paid out and you've got $1 million hospital bill to pay.
Yes, and literally in the last week and a half, I've had two of those difficult conversations. And this is why I just can't say it enough. You have to make sure on your own auto policy that you've got underinsured motorist coverage, underinsured motorist coverage. You're going to have uninsured motorist coverage. That's if an uninsured motorist hits you, but underinsured motorist coverage comes into play when the driver that caused the accident doesn't have enough insurance to cover all of your damages. And you can't, again, I'm like a broken record, but you can't go cheap. Get as high limits as you can afford because you never know. And the problem is we run into these situations where somebody has a $500,000 claim and there's $50,000 of coverage, or there's $25,000 of coverage. And there's simply there's no more money because you can't, people are like, well, can't we sue them? Can't we go out? No, I mean, you can, and you can go get $1 million judgment against them. And then they're going to take it out in bankruptcy. And it's a piece of paper that means nothing. So we need insurance. And yes, these are tough conversations. I think the longer a lawyer is doing it, the more comfortable and confident they are in explaining this to people. Because I do know, and even today, you get clients, and how do I want to say it? But they've got their thoughts. They've been on Google. They've been researching, and I tell them, look, if a doctor tells you you've got cancer, it's not like I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to argue with the doctor and, come up with different scenarios. I mean, the facts are the facts. And with our situation, the law is the law, and we as lawyers work inside the law. We don't make the law. And so sometimes we're delivering really hard news. And again, people don't want to hear it, but hopefully we're able to explain it in such a way that it does make sense. It sinks in, and, we're able to work through with them the best possible resolution that we can. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, you got to have tough conversations.
And something else is the underinsured motorist coverage that you want to make sure you have on your own policy. It is pretty inexpensive coverage to get. So it's definitely look into it. If you don't have it, if you can, absolutely get it. Because when you need it, there's nothing more valuable than the few dollars a month that you're paying for it.
Amen. There's a whole podcast episode on underinsured coverage, and I talk about the fact that, if you can afford X, then see what it is to get Y, and then, from there, see what it is to get Z. Just go up to see, oh, wow, it's only $16 more every 6 months. Okay. Well, why wouldn't I double my coverage? So thank you for pointing that out. Yeah. I mean, again, we're in this and we see it just too often. And it's heartbreaking because literally there are people that need to be compensated. They've got outstanding medical bills, lost wages, and, just the harms and the losses that went with it, that non-economic part of it. And they're just not going to get fully compensated. And so, there's only really one type of vehicle that has a requirement when they're on the road to have, at least $750,000 of coverage. And that's commercial vehicles, semi-trucks, Amazon delivery vehicles, UPS, whatever. And everybody else, 25,000 is the state minimum required. And that's a joke because obviously medical bills today and all that stuff quickly will take any and all of that. So just can't emphasize it enough. That's our PSA on this episode. And now moving along, let me ask you this: so in the personal injury realm, what is it that what kind of cases? I mean, obviously we deal with a lot of the same stuff: car accidents, falls, dog bites, the sort of one-offs, I would say, right? Something kind of unique. But I mean, what is it that you like to be involved in?
So I think this stems again from my family law background. I really enjoy helping children who have been injured. And of course, that comes in the form of representing their parent, but being able to help the children. And there's some special things that go in with that. So while they're a minor, if you are able to secure a settlement on their behalf, you have to either do an approval of minor settlement with the court. So it goes back to keeping me in the courtroom, or sometimes a guardianship and conservatorship action for the parent to maintain the money on behalf of the minor child until he or she reaches the age of 18. So I kind of gravitate towards kids, helping kids. I really enjoy that aspect of it.
And sadly, I mean, on a regular basis, we have injured children. Because whether it's in a car accident or unfortunately we see dog bite victims that are children, I don't know, they seem to be easier targets sometimes for a dog that's not where it's supposed to be or whatever the situation is. We come across a lot of children, and legally they're called minors if they're under the age of 18. And yeah, there's obviously some special things that are involved with those types of claims. And, even though the parent is the client, at the end of the day, there's a reason that a court has to approve a minor settlement if it's over a certain amount, just to make sure that child's compensation is appropriately protected. And again, yeah, we've had you involved in quite a few of those, and and handling them.
Yeah. And I'll say that the judges around here do a great job at scrutinizing that. They will go through and they will say, what were the child's injuries? How much are they getting? And, so if you got policy limits and that's all there is, then that's the response. But sometimes it's like, well, is there more out there? Is there something more you can do? So I think the judges around this area are pretty protective of the children as well, which I appreciate.
And yes, I agree with that statement as well. So, well, listen, we've been really happy to have you back and in the mix and helping people. And you're definitely a fighter, and you like to mix it up, and so that's all good. And somebody that likes to get in the courtroom, you're welcome here, and I can lessen some of my courtroom time. And yeah, we just. I'm glad to have you, and glad you were able to join me today on the podcast.
Likewise. Thank you.
You bet. And hey, if anybody needs our help, if you've had an injury or something like that, you know how to find us. It's always a free consultation, and we're happy to see if something you have going on is something that we can help with. So otherwise, as always, be safe and be well, and talk to you on the next one.
Bye.